Hey gang, this is Devin. So I have a fresh version of 4 Firewall Blue 1 deployed. If I do a get IP, it comes back at .103, right? I have an inventory file that hasn't really changed that much since last we spoke. However, I changed the label. This used to be called network, and this used to be name server all glommed together. I gave it a underscore there. So this is what I would suggest you do. I would suggest you power down Firewall Blue 1 and take a powered off snapshot. Let's call this snapshot before Ansible, because if you're like me, you're going to break it 3 times before you get it right. Okay? So do that so you can revert, right? And then bring it back up again, and we'll meet right here. So I'm going to assume you just got that done. You paused the video, you powered down, you took that snapshot, and you're ready to rock and roll. So let's first take a look at my approach to deploying a running configuration, right, to vyos. We have this temporary DHCP IP address that we're going to want to turn into a static IP address. We're going to want to do a few things. We're going to want to set a NAT source rule such that systems behind this firewall can get out to the internet, right? At some point, we're going to set up a DHCP server on this box, but that time is not now. What else are we going to do? We're going to change the password for the user, right? It's kind of important, and we'll cover some security issues that come about when you're doing things with Ansible. So my view on sensitive variables is you keep them the hell out of GitHub, right? You should not have uh, Ansible vault files in your public GitHub. I probably wouldn't even put them in my private uh, GitHub. I would rather have placeholders saying, "Hey, this is a sample file of what your vault should look like, unencrypted." Right. So that's how I would go about doing that. Be very careful and mindful of those things you put into GitHub, particularly any SSH keying materials. If you're working with AWS, you need to make sure you keep those secrets out of there as well, right? And I'm sure other professors have drilled this into your head by now, but I will let you know if I see that stuff in your GitHub, and it won't be terribly pleasant. Okay, off my soapbox. So you have all probably used vyos before. Let's take a look at a templated configuration, because this is the approach that I use. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a raw vyos configuration that's been populated by the variables of my choice into the location that vyos loads on boot, right? That I found this way is probably the simplest way. There's a couple alternatives that I welcome you to investigate and try. I've done them before, and some of them hold promise, some of them hold peril, right? So one of the things that you could do is you could configure your Ansible inventory such that Ansible knows that you're talking to vyos, and you can execute raw vyos commands. This gets a little bit sticky when you try to change the IP address on the fly. How can you do a commit, right? Or excuse me, a save after you've done a commit if you no longer have a connection, right? All right, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to operate at a layer that's lower than the networking layer. I'm talking about using uh, VMware guest credentials to do things at the hypervisor level, where you can actually run commands on this box even if it's not networked. It's got to be powered on, but it doesn't have to be networked. It has to have VMware tools to make this happen. And fortunately, vyos ships with VMware tools. So this should look very familiar to you. So my suggestion to you is to fire up vyos, right? Uh, Type this stuff in statically. Set interfaces, Ethernet, ETH0 address, 10.0.17.200/24. Get this all down pat, right? And then you'll have your own template like I have here, right? And then what you do is you take those hard coded variables and you make them conform to Jinja template language. So this is going to, these curly braces and this variable are going to be replaced on the fly by that same variable right here, this WAN IP variable. Okay, so hopefully I'm not going too fast, but let's continue on. One issue is dealing with this pesky password, right? I said I didn't want to have a password hash in GitHub. So how do we get around that? What we're going to do is we're going to calculate this password hash dynamically in the playbook, right? And then we're going to throw it in here. So this is relatively new for me. I've been doing this for the last year or so, but before you really had to pre-calculate these hashes by hand using Python. But now Ansible sort of lets you do that in a couple different ways. So let's look at our config. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go, hey, user, what's going to be your new vyos password? Okay, the user is going to type in that text will be masked, right? And then I'm going to set what's called a local fact, right? I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to create this dynamic variable, and that variable is going to be the password, but the password hashed with the SHA-512 algorithm, right? And then the result of this calculation is stuffed in the password hash, which in turn is sucked into that Jinja script. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run this template command, and the template command really marries up all the variables, right, that are in the template and all the variables that we know about that have been invoked either through your inventory or this fact that I just created, and it's going to glom them all together, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to drop it into config.boot. So if you are a Cisco person, you know about the saved configuration, right? So yeah, the running configuration might be different from the saved configuration, but if you have a boot, guess what gets loaded? It's the saved configuration. Same holds true for vyos. So we're going to drop this config, we're going to bounce the box, it'll come up on 200, and everything will be awesome. Knock on wood. This is the third time I've done it, okay? This last play is basically dealing with the fact that I need to reboot this box unceremoniously, right? So it'll do that, and it'll come up on a different IP address, and that's really why I'm saying don't hang up, don't stop the command that SSH was running prior to reboot. Okay, I didn't express that correctly, but this works, right? This command. All right, let's give this a go. Let me pop into my Bash terminal. I'm hoping I have this in history. Let's see if I do. Yeah. Okay. So I need to be in a different directory. cd Ansible. And again, don't run this in PowerShell. You can, right? But the paths are expressed a little bit differently. There's that / you got to have in front of a PowerShell path. All right, ask me my password. I'm going to give it my base VM password, which you should have created. When you created your base vyos image, right? I'm not going to screw this up. Let's see. Notice I don't have a double check your password, right? So I typed it wrong last time I ran this, and I had to start over. So it's going to do its thing. Oop, the connection timed out. Let's try it again. Hope it works. Knock on wood. Oh yeah. Okay. So it drops out, right? So if we hadn't done that no hang up, it would just be sitting here hanging, and it would never really return. So it's rebooting. I'm going to ping the new IP address. And I'm just going to hang out for a little bit. Let me pause my video while this thing goes to town. All right, as you can see here, hey, my ping is returning, and this is why Linux just pings forever, right? To do two tests of this sort, right? Not to annoy you. All right, I'll break out of there, and then I'm going to go ahead and run that get IP thing again, and let's see if it returns. So notice it hasn't returned the IP address, right? This is because VMware Tools is not up yet. If I do it again, it might return. Let me try again. There it is. So it's up. So now let me SSH into this box. Let me go back to Bash. SSH vyos. See if I can remember the password this time. I'm in. Okay, that was nerve-wracking. And notice that I have a new host name, right? That was a different password than my base, so that worked fine. If I type configure, we'll just walk through here. Show, you'll see I have a new IP address, right? ETH, the ETH1 interface has been set as well. Some of that stuff looks a little bit weird, right? There's this offload thing. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Maybe it's something with the new vyos version, but I didn't. That wasn't in my template, right? I didn't type it in there. I have a outbound interface, or excuse me, a NAT source rule, right, with outbound interface that looks right. And then I have my default gateway. There's a new way to do it in the newer versions of iOS. What else is going on here? This is my new hash, right? That was calculated by my playbook, right? And then the name server is going to be, DC1, right? So what I expect to see from you is kind of a tour of, I want to see that playbook run, right? And then I want to see you do the get IP before, right? Up here, where is it? It's 103, right? And I do it again down here, and it's 200. Okay, so good luck on this last part of the milestone. This is a tough one. Okay, so the hard part is going to be getting your own template because I'm not giving it to you. All right, bye now.